hills. And then you drop down into this pancake griddle flat area called the Falaise Gap. And it's this flat land, like a rectangular area that runs west to east, pointing right to the Seine River and Germany. On the other side of it is another set of hills. So it's like a little tunnel, a little ditch running. It's wide open, it's like Iowa. All right? If we can get the Germans in the Falaise Gap, there's nowhere to run, there's nowhere to hide. We have every single one of them. Bradley talks to our Secretary of the State, says an opportunity like this comes only once in a century for a military commander to catch your enemy out in the open and destroy them all. This is going to be awesome. And just as he says that, Bradley chokes. He wants to do it, but he can't go all in. And the big debate is whether to do a short hook to the ribs of the German army or go for the big roundhouse knockout and crush them. Go to Falaise or go all the way to the Seine River and cut off their retreat. Patton says, I got this. You give me gas. Once again, man, I'll swing around behind him. I'll get to the Seine, and you just flush him right to me, like flushing deer. I'll either kill him or capture him. This is not even going to be hard. We're there. They can't cross the river if I'm standing next to it. I don't know, George. What if you run out of gas? Make sure I don't. All right. Or, that's fine. My boys have rifles. All right. We'll dig in by the ditch and make them come at us. And I'm telling you guys, we got this. But they don't. They opt for the shorter version. It was safer. Montgomery says, look, I'm coming down close to Paris. You know, we don't want to spread ourselves too thin. George, what if my boys fire onto yours? Patton says you won't. The Germans will be in between us. Don't worry about it. If that happens, I'll take the heat for it. But by God, let's end this war. Patton wants to come across the south and get around behind him. Here's the Falaise pocket, this big giant rectangle. It is absolute beautiful terrain to catch an enemy in. And you literally can't miss them. And the guys decide, no. All right? Patton, you're going to come as far north as the city of Chambois. And you're going to wait for the Polish armored infantry to come down. Patton's like, why wait for them? Let me keep going. We'll capture the Germans in a vice. This is going to be awesome. August 17th, Patler's almost to the Falaise Gap. He's almost to the far west end of the rectangle. Let him come to me. Patton is begging, please let me close the gap. And while Eisenhower sent out that memo about zeal and speed and determination, he backs off. Says, George, you might be overrun. The Germans are in such a rush to retreat, they may overrun you. Patton's like, I guarantee they're not. I will guarantee, even if we run out of gas, I'll line up my tanks hub to hub, and they're going to stop. I guarantee it. But he doesn't. He's also told that if he goes any farther, he will cross into an area reserved for Montgomery's 21st Army. And he's like, please God, don't tell me we're playing politics. Who cares who area it is as long as we win the war? This is Patton saying, this is a shocking statement, there's glory enough for everyone if we win. Right, there'll be plenty to go around. Don't worry. With the Germans on the run, even though they planned for that short hook to the ribs, Montgomery and Eisenhower and Bradley kind of stopped short. It's like a little jab to the stomach. It has nothing on it. And when they stop, there is a 2-mile wide area in the Falaise Gap that the Germans are funneled into, and a lot of guys make it out. The Allies will bomb, they will strafe, they will kill a lot of Germans. Eisenhower describes it as walking physically through Dante's Inferno. The problem is about 50%, 40 to 50% of the German army makes it out of the Falaise Gap. which means what Patton had said, we want to stop them now so we don't have to fight them again. All right? We've seen this enough. I saw it in North Africa. I said it in Sicily. Stop them so we don't have to fight them again. The German soldiers are good, and they get out. And the scenes are incredible. This is called Hell's Highway in the Falaise Gap. You know, and you can see a lot of the Germans, these down here, there's, you know, a tank and some trucks, but a lot of the German equipment is being moved by horse and wagon. 687,000 horses are going to be killed in the Battle of Normandy. There's devastation everywhere. A lot of the American GIs who were farm boys said they marveled at the beauty of the tack on the horses. Their tails were all bobbed, but they couldn't handle that. Seeing guys being blown to bits was one thing, but hearing the horses whinny and neigh in pain was too much. Some guys, their job was to go around and put down the horses. It said it broke their heart. And as nasty and bad and devastating as it was, the Germans slip away. These are some of the guys that just gave up. You can see them. It's not that like they got away clean. There's an entire field. This is the Falaise Gap. Something's out in there, you're going to hit it. Entire armored column just destroyed, cooked, beat up. These guys, all right, that's enough. We're done. Days later, the smell was so bad, a lot of guys who threw away their poison gas masks said they wish they would have kept them. Spotter plane pilots up in Piper Cub said the smell was so bad, even hundreds of feet in the air, they threw up on themselves. It was just a ghastly, nasty sight. For months, French farmers said it looked like a cloud was hovering over the Falaise Gap. It was flies, just on all the dead bodies seen there. So, Heinz Gudrun Jr. kept his staff car. And he said, my driver and I would drive for a minute or two, and then we would stop at night and we would look and we would listen for 10 minutes. And then we would drive another minute or two and repeat the process. He said they came within 100 yards of the Polish 1st Armored Brigade. He said he could hear them and kind of see them, but he's one of the guys who makes it out. And this is one of those kind of feel-good stories in all this chaos. Heinrich Durbin said he was there guarding a crossroad on lookout duty, and all of a sudden some headlights come flying down. He's like, who in the guy's name is driving with headlights? That can't be one of ours. And the truck turned right at his roadblock, and it was an American Red Cross vehicle. And the guy's like, oh my God. Who are you? He's like, well, I'm Panzer Grenadier Heinrich Durbin. Who are you? He's like, well, I'm, Private Joe, Smith. I'm looking for such and such town. Who you got on there? Oh, I got wounded. He's like, well, turn your headlights off for a half a mile and go that way. That's where you want to go. Oh, man, thanks. Durbin said he was there about an hour later, and coming down the road where he told the ambulance to go, comes the ambulance. Its headlights click on, it does a U-turn in front of him, the driver jumps out with 2 crate loads of American Pall Mall cigarettes, drops them on the ground, said thank you, got back in the ambulance and left. And so, water, food, cigarettes, all right, whatever. All right, so, anyway, the Germans got through, and waiting for them were new members of the SS sent by Hitler to retool and recapture the army, to put it back together as they got close to the Seine River. The other thing that halted the attack on the Falaise Gap is the liberation of Paris. And what you're not going to find in a lot of places, but it's in his memoir, Eisenhower wanted to go around Paris. He goes, we don't really want to liberate Paris just yet. Because if we do, it's going to take a lot of time, and we're going to have to feed everybody. And there are thousands of people there, and they'll consume resources. We can't say no once we go in there. Or Churchill and Roosevelt are like, dude, come on, man, it's Paris, dude. You gotta It's like, no, not really. Like, we just go around that sucker and keep going east. But he does. And the United States Army gets outside the gates of Paris, and they wait for French General Jacques Leclerc to show up and the French 2nd Armored Division. And when Paris is liberated, according to Ernest Hemingway, it was one of the great parties of the world of all time. He said it was like something you had never seen before in your life. The wine came out and the champagne, and women were climbing on tanks and hugging guys, and oh, it was wonderful. And to thank the Americans, the 4th Division, who had been fighting since D-Day, they landed on Utah Beach, are told that they were going to get a victory parade. They were going to march from the Arc de Triomphe down the Champs-Élysées to the Place de la Concorde, and that's great. And the guys loved it, right? You know, I'm sure, you know, it's a gigantic party, all of Paris. They didn't sleep for a week. Who knows how much alcohol was consumed during this thing. And it was great for the soldiers to march down the Champs-Élysées, but it took time. And in that time, the Germans are escaping. Yeah, it's a great story, and I'm glad Hemingway had a great time, but finish the job. And so, as the first half of the battle for France ends, the Allies lose 210,000 guys. 2/3 of those losses were American. But the Germans, all right, 450,000. 240,000 are killed and wounded. The other half just surrendered or went missing. They just went to ground and, you know, became French. But the Germans make it out and get home. American intelligence says the war is about over, but unfortunately, because those guys got out of there, it was not to be. And this brings us through the end of August to the beginning of September, as Patton rushes to cross the Seine River, where he will make it at the little town of Fontainebleau. And as he and his men cross the Seine, the bridge going over it is blown. A couple tanks get across, but only one section of the bridge was blown up. The French resistance sacrificed themselves, pulling explosive charges off the bridge. One of Patton's colonels, the West Point swimmer, swam the Seine River and got a bunch of rowboats. He tows them back across the Seine, a guy named John Wood, and he begins ferrying troops over and engineers to the other side where they rebuild the bridge. Patton makes it across the Seine. But as he does, all of a sudden the Luftwaffe shows up. Luftwaffe hadn't been seen in years. Everyone thought they were shot out of the sky. But the Luftwaffe had been taking a beating. At one time hailed heroes of the Reich. Now they're being blamed for all the bombs being dropped on Dresden and Hamburg and Munich. And so now they get a chance to bomb and strafe Patton's guys. And they do a lot of damage. But still, Patton and his men are going 30 to 50 miles a day. They're going through the old World War I battlefield, Somme, Ypres, the American Meuse-Argonne. They're covering in hours or days what their dads fought 4 years to cross. It's amazing. And euphoria was running so high, again, another airdrop is planned on Berlin. And all that's about to grind to a halt. Omar Bradley makes another mistake. Coming into, they're like flies flying around. I see flies all over the back. They're like, you know,
Good flies.
all right. Someone must be really sweet to attract them. It's not me, that I can guarantee. So anyway, Bradley halts everything coming ashore except gasoline and ammunition. In the fall, L.L. Bean had designed winter clothing for the mud and the wetness of Northern Europe. All the coats and gloves and mittens and toboggans and boots were stuck on the ships, and gasoline and ammo goes forward. A lot of the Germans hadn't been eating for days. Since they were running across France, they were living off the land. and they get closer to Germany, they find a bunch of supply dumps and found out that their officers were hoarding all the good food. The soldiers were getting Limburger cheese and like a toothpaste tube and coarse black bread, while the officers were eating high on the hog. But the German soldiers couldn't stop, and they could only take what they could carry. They had to keep moving. Patton is chasing them down. Patton is on the fly. And when Bradley says, "George, I'm getting you food," he's like, "Why? I got food. I got so much of it." Patton would liberate a supply dump. He would give most of the food to the French civilians, told his men to take the canned beef, shove it in their packs, and keep moving. We don't have time to carry all this stuff. Give it to the people and let's roll. And this is GIs cleaning up what can't be used, was being dragged out of the mud and given to the civilians. What couldn't be used was actually used as food for the remaining livestock of the area. So a lot of it goes to waste. So, but the farther east the army goes, the longer the supply line is. Again, you've got Montgomery, Bradley, and Patton. They're sucking the resources dry. So a group of African American volunteers show up, and they begin to ferry stuff out in the Red Ball Express. And as hard as these guys worked, they were only able to move 135,000 tons of supplies per day. Each army required 400,000. So it's a heroic effort, but it's really a drop in the bucket. And at times, they rotated. Patton gets it Monday, Bradley gets it Tuesday, Montgomery gets it Wednesday, and then on Thursday it goes back to Patton. These guys drove a one-way circuit. At its height was about 800 miles, going farther and farther and farther, driving 24 hours a day at night at great risk to themselves. They didn't sleep. They just loaded up their trucks and took off. As fast as they delivered it, though, coming from the old Omaha Beach, going through the debacle of Paris, getting eastward, as soon as they handed it out, the tanks would take off and use it all up. And so, to keep morale, they had little signs. All right, 11,000 tons so far today. And these guys were supply soldiers who wanted to make a difference in the war. No one made them do this. Drive the trucks at night, bumper to bumper, through enemy territory. But they did it. The problem is, and this is a great photo, all these are 5-gallon cans called jerry cans. And the truckers would bring them in and they would hand them out to the